From the Detroit Free Press, it's Thursday, January 7th. Here are today's top stories, presented by Bush's Fresh Food Market. Calling all foodies, Bush's is hiring. Are you passionate about food, looking for growth, development, and excellent wages? Come grow with Bush's and apply online at bushes.com/join our team. That's Bush's, BUSCHS.com/join our team.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Kerry Jr. II. What started out as a routine electoral vote certification process turned into what some lawmakers are calling an attack on American democracy. Wednesday afternoon, Trump-loyal extremists stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., resulting in a lockdown. The mayor of D.C. also instituted a 6 p.m. curfew. Free Press reporter Clara Hendrickson has the details. Clara, thank you for joining me.
Sure, no problem.
I think we knew that there was going to be some tension on this day, but not initially assuming it would get to this degree. So break down what took place.
Sure. So you're right. I think we all went into the day knowing that it was going to be a stress test for American democracy, given the scope of Republican objections to the Electoral College votes. But I don't think anyone was really expecting what we ended up seeing.
Before we get into what happened, what were the original plans on Wednesday?
So under federal law, Congress is required to meet during a joint session to review the Electoral College votes cast by each state. Under the law, if states have resolved disputes about the election this year by December 6th, Congress is required to accept those electoral votes. All but one state, Wisconsin, met that safe harbor deadline, but still Republicans in the House and Senate had vowed to object to the Electoral College votes, and they were able to do that for the state of Arizona. And the joint session broke out into separate meetings between the House and Senate, as is required by law, to consider the objections. But that meeting was interrupted when the pro-Trump extremists stormed the Capitol. So instead, what is usually a routine administrative meeting of Congress didn't even get to take place today, and it turned violent.
So where was law enforcement during the demonstrations?
Yeah, so the police had been mobilized at the Capitol building ahead of the demonstrations today, and the pro-Trump extremists were able to get past the police and enter the building. Some even broke windows to make their way inside the Capitol building.
How far were the demonstrators able to get into the building?
So it's incredible how far into the building they were able to get. They entered the rotunda where they were met with armed officers. They entered the Senate chamber and Nancy Pelosi's office.
Was law enforcement prepared for this type of altercation?
As we've seen at pro-Trump rallies and demonstrations in the past, there has been violence that's broken out between people who are Trump supporters and counter-protesters. And so the city was preparing for those kinds of violent confrontations. But the pro-Trump extremists who stormed the Capitol really caused alarm. And now the city has mobilized the National Guard and put in place a curfew. There's still folks who are out and about and in the city past the curfew.
Extremist Trump supporters were creating this disruption. What was President Trump himself in all of this?
Trump waited a while to say anything about the extremists that had stormed the Capitol building. In a tweet, he urged people to stay peaceful.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace.
But he also continued to repeat false claims that he won the election in a landslide and took no responsibility for the violence.
We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it.
What motivated these extremist demonstrators to come out on Wednesday to create this sort of disruption that they created?
Well, so for a while, there had been demonstrations planned in Washington, D.C. on this day, and there were demonstrations from Stop the Steal protests, Proud Boys who had planned to meet in Washington, D.C. So there were a lot of different groups that had gotten permits from the Park Service to convene in the nation's capital.
Were there any injuries?
We know that several people have been injured. One woman was shot and recently pronounced dead, but details are still coming in about those injuries and the death.
Definitely a result we were hoping to avoid in situations like these. Free Press reporter Clara Hendrickson, thank you so much for your insight.
Thanks for having me.
After the riots dispersed, Congress resumed session. Some Republican lawmakers who planned to challenge the votes changed their minds, and Joe Biden was confirmed to be the next president of the United States.
For the Detroit Free Press, I'm Darcy Moran, and I'm going to summarize a portion of the U.S. Criminal Code. In short, there's a penalty up to 20 years in prison if 2 or more people in any state or territory conspire to, quote, prevent, hinder, or delay the execution of any law of the United States, unquote. The charge is sedition, or specifically seditious conspiracy, and legal experts say it's a likely charge for some supporters of President Donald Trump who stormed the U.S. Capitol building Wednesday amid a joint session to count Electoral College votes in the 2020 election. The supporters made their way past barricades, broken through windows, representatives were sent hiding, and one person was fatally shot. Devin Schindler of Western Michigan University's Cooley Law School said the hindrance is the key in the sedition charge. He said, quote, "It seems fairly clear to me, based on what we're seeing, that folks are in fact almost textbook violating the seditious conspiracy statute by using force to interfere with lawful government activity." This isn't the first time the Capitol has been assaulted in some capacity either. For more on that, check on freep.com.
For more stories from the Detroit Free Press, be sure to check out freep.com. That's FREEP.com. If you're a fan and want to support our quality local journalism, subscribe. Go to freep.com/special offer.